My 2-year-old daughter, Lily, was struggling to breathe, her face flushed dark red with pneumonia. As my wife, Sarah, sat beside her on the couch counting her shallow breaths, my phone lit up. It was my mother, Martha, posting in our family group chat. "Friday, all 14 of us are staying at your lakefront cottage for 2 weeks. Have everything ready." She hadn't asked if the place was free. She hadn't even asked about Lily, even though we had posted just hours earlier that our daughter was running a high fever. Sarah typed back, pleading, "Lily has pneumonia and needs absolute quiet. Can everyone please wait until next week?" The reply came immediately from my father, Arthur. "Wesley already took time off. Everyone made plans. Nothing is changing." Wesley is my older brother, a man who has never let anyone else's emergency get in the way of a vacation he's already packed for. I stood in our Columbus kitchen, running the math of every summer before this one. The times they showed up unannounced, took the best rooms, and treated me like staff. The cottage didn't even belong to my side of the family. It had been built by Sarah's parents and signed over to her. My family had never contributed a single dime or hour to fix it up, yet they treated it like their personal resort. Sarah looked at me, exhausted. "I am not taking a sick toddler into a house crowded with 14 people," she said. I knew my family's expectation. Sarah would stay behind with our sick daughter while I drove 5 hours to play host, mow the lawn, and stock the fridge for them. I typed one word back, "Fine." Sarah looked up hurt. "Fine as in they're coming." I set the phone face down. "No, fine as in I'm done playing their game." I immediately called Greg, the technician who managed the cottage smart lock system, and asked him to meet me at the lake first thing in the morning. I felt the familiar weight of guilt pressing down on me. My parents were in their 70s and the trip was planned. I knew I was about to be cast as the villain of the family. But as I looked at Lily holding my finger in her sleep, I realized I didn't care about their vacation anymore. I packed a duffel bag and left before sunrise, heading toward a confrontation that would shatter my family's sense of entitlement forever. I hit the highway to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin at 5 in the morning on Thursday. The whole drive, my phone buzzed constantly. But the messages weren't asking about my sick daughter. Instead, my mother wrote, "Buy the low-fat milk. Make sure the master bedroom is clear for your father. Wesley wants the boat dock ready." Not one message asked how Lily was breathing. I arrived at the cottage around 10 and met Greg. I instructed him to change the smart keypad lock, delete every existing guest code, and lock down the garage. While he worked, I went inside and cleared the house. I emptied the fridge, packed Sarah's personal belongings, and pulled the patio furniture into the garage. Before locking the door, I taped a sign to the front window, "Cottage closed, no guests this week." As I was locking up, my father called. He didn't ask about Lily either. "Did you stock the freezer?" he demanded. "The cottage is closed, Dad," I replied. "There will be no guests this week." There was a tense silence. "You don't get to embarrass your mother like this," he said coldly. I felt the old reflex to apologize, but then I saw Lily's little rocking chair by the window. "My daughter is sick, Dad. Families adjust." "Children get sick all the time," he snapped. "Families adjust to the plans." "That's exactly what I'm doing," I said and hung up. My hand was shaking. I opened the lock app on my phone and deleted every guest account one by one. The screen showed a clean list, just my name and Sarah's. By Friday afternoon, I was with Sarah and Lily at my in-laws' place. Lily's fever had dropped slightly, which was the first relief we'd felt in days. But at 3 in the afternoon, my phone vibrated with a motion alert from the cottage security camera. 3 large SUVs had just pulled into the driveway. 14 people. Suitcases, coolers, and dogs piled out. They stood in the hot sun, confidently walking up to the keypad. I watched in silence on my screen as my brother Wesley stepped up to the door and entered the old code, completely unaware that his access had been permanently revoked. "The cottage is closed, Dad," I replied. "There will be no guests this week." There was a tense silence. "You don't get to embarrass your mother like this," he said coldly. I felt the old reflex to apologize, but then I saw Lily's little rocking chair by the window. "My daughter is sick, Dad. Families adjust." "Children get sick all the time," he snapped. "Families adjust to the plans." "That's exactly what I'm doing," I said and hung up. My hand was shaking. I opened the lock app on my phone and deleted every guest account one by one. The screen showed a clean list, just my name and Sarah's. By Friday afternoon, I was with Sarah and Lily at my in-laws' place. Lily's fever had dropped slightly, which was the first relief we'd felt in days. But at 3 in the afternoon, my phone vibrated with a motion alert from the cottage security camera. 3 large SUVs had just pulled into the driveway. 14 people. Suitcases, coolers, and dogs piled out. They stood in the hot sun, confidently walking up to the keypad. I watched in silence on my screen as my brother Wesley stepped up to the door and entered the old code, completely unaware that his access had been permanently revoked. "The cottage is closed, Dad," I replied. "There will be no guests this week." There was a tense silence. "You don't get to embarrass your mother like this," he said coldly. I felt the old reflex to apologize, but then I saw Lily's little rocking chair by the window. "My daughter is sick, Dad. Families adjust. Children get sick all the time," he snapped. "Families adjust to the plans. That's exactly what I'm doing," I said and hung up. My hand was shaking. I opened the lock app on my phone and deleted every guest account one by one. The screen showed a clean list, just my name and Sarah's. By Friday afternoon, I was with Sarah and Lily at my in-laws' place. Lily's fever had dropped slightly, which was the first relief we'd felt in days. But at 3 in the afternoon, my phone vibrated with a motion alert from the cottage security camera. 3 large SUVs had just pulled into the driveway. 14 people. Suitcases, coolers, and dogs piled out. They stood in the hot sun, confidently walking up to the keypad. I watched in silence on my screen as my brother Wesley stepped up to the door and entered the old code, completely unaware that his access had been permanently revoked. On my phone screen, I watched the confusion turn into anger. Wesley punched the code repeatedly, shaking his head. My mother began dialing her phone while my father Arthur walked the perimeter of the cottage looking for an unlocked window. My phone rang. I let the calls go to voicemail. First came my mother's voice, confused. "Luke, the lock is broken. Call me." Then Wesley sharper, "Very funny, Luke. Send the new code now." Finally, "My father, your mother is standing in the heat. Fix this." I refused to back down. I sent one group text. "The house is closed. I told Dad yesterday. There are vacancies at the Grand Inn and Lakeview Suites nearby." That's when Pete, our retired neighbor from across the street, walked over. With 3 vehicles blocking the narrow road, he decided to speak up. Wesley asked him if he had a spare key. "I don't," Pete said, leaning on his rake. "Luke disabled the guest codes yesterday. The place is closed because his little girl is sick." My mother argued, "But this is the family cottage." Pete corrected her, calm as anything. "Actually, it belongs to Sarah. Her parents built it." That sentence cut through my brother's entitlement like a knife. It was a fact my family had spent 2 decades pretending didn't exist. To make matters worse, one of the dogs knocked over a cooler, sending ice and soda cans rolling down the driveway. In the chaos, my nephew asked loudly, "Uncle Wesley, I thought you said this was our house." Wesley had no answer. Defeated, they eventually drove away to find a hotel. But the retaliation was swift. That night, Wesley posted on Facebook, "My brother locked our elderly parents and young children out of the family lake house in the heat. Some people forget where they came from." He left out the pneumonia. He left out Sarah's ownership. Instantly, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years began messaging me, calling me cruel and ungrateful. I sat in the dark, wondering if I had gone too far. But when Lily woke up coughing and clung to my chest, whispering, "No loud people, Daddy," all my doubts vanished. I turned my phone off. But the real battle was yet to come, and Sarah was about to arm me with the ultimate weapon. The next morning, we took Lily back to urgent care. As we sat in the waiting room, I scrolled through the toxic messages from my extended family. I felt the old guilt creeping back, tempting me to reopen the cottage just to make the noise stop. But Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a thick blue binder. Inside were bank statements, tax returns, and receipts spanning over 20 years. "You keep remembering what they needed," Sarah said gently. I kept remembering what it cost our family. As we flipped through the pages, the numbers stared back at me. $242,000. That was the total cash and material cost I had given to my family, not counting thousands of unpaid hours of physical labor. 3 memories stood out. In 2008, Wesley came up $34,000 short on his mortgage. My father told me, "You're doing well, Luke. Your brother has children." We pulled that money from our own kitchen renovation savings. Wesley promised to pay it back in 2 years. Instead, he bought a new boat. In 2016, we canceled our first vacation in years because my parents' roof leaked. I spent 6 days replacing it for free, while Sarah spent our anniversary week alone. And finally, the cottage itself, where Sarah had been made to feel like a guest in the property her own parents had gifted her. I realized I had been buying peace with my parents using my wife's patience and our daughter's future. I stood up, the fog finally clearing. Once Lily was safely home and recovering, I sent one last text to the family chat. "We will hold a family meeting 3 weeks from Saturday at my house. I will explain everything once. The new rules are final." My father replied immediately, "Good, you owe everyone an apology." 3 weeks later, they arrived at my Columbus house. They walked onto the back patio with their arms crossed, looking smug and expecting a full surrender. But as they sat down at the table, I placed a stack of printed documents in front of each adult, and the look of triumph on Wesley's face began to decay into pure panic. I didn't raise my voice. I simply went down the list. $34,000 for Wesley's mortgage, $11,000 in emergency payments, $16,000 for my mother's medical bills, and $50,000 in expenses for a cottage that wasn't theirs. $242,000 in total. Wesley sneered. You're treating family like a business. A business would have sent invoices, Wesley, I replied. I never did. My father, Arthur, spoke up. After everything we did to raise you, this is how you repay us. You raised me, and I'm grateful, I said. But that doesn't give you a lifetime claim on my wife's house, our savings, or our boundaries. Sarah then placed a printed text message in front of Wesley. It was a message he had sent her the previous summer. Tell Sarah to clear her things out of the master closet before we arrive. Why was I ordered to clear my belongings out of a house my parents gave me? Sarah asked. Wesley stared at the paper, unable to speak. I laid down the final, non-negotiable terms. Nobody enters the cottage without our written invitation. The old guest codes are permanently deleted. No more informal loans to cover Wesley's lifestyle. And anyone who uses my daughter's illness as leverage will be cut off completely. My father asked if I was choosing Sarah's family over my own. I looked through the window at Sarah and Lily playing in the living room. I'm choosing the family I am responsible for, I told him. Wesley deleted his Facebook post before leaving the table, terrified that I would post the group chat screenshots in the comments. The meeting ended in a heavy, revealing silence. It took 5 months of silence before Wesley spoke to me again. My parents sent stiff, formal texts on holidays, but the weight that lifted off our household was massive. We finally kept our own savings. We took our first peaceful family vacation without fixing someone else's roof. One winter evening, my mother called. She didn't demand or announce. In a quiet, hesitant voice, she asked, would it be all right if your father and I came to visit Sunday afternoon? It wasn't a movie ending, and it wasn't a full apology, but it was the first time she had ever asked. I looked at Sarah, who gave me a gentle nod. Sunday at 2 works, I said. We had finally claimed the right to decide who gets to walk through our front door, and our family was finally beginning to heal.